So just very simple. So just feel the leg either holds you or it moves you. Yeah. So this leg is moving me, and then this leg holds me. And then this leg moves me, and this leg holds me. Yeah, so just feel those two modes of the legs. That's it. So what we would like is for that is to basically eradicate that holding phase. So the leg isn't actually holding me, it's returning just as enough energy to keep me relatively still. So if you think of this hand being with your own weight that's going down, and this is with the energy that's returning from the ground. So it seems like you stop, but it's a bit like the roller coaster, you know, that gets slower and slower as it goes to the top, and then it trundles down the other side. Great. And now let's just bring it to riding horse. Okay, now let's just go. So what we want to do is that whenever we're still, very much aware that we're poised, you know, we're in balance. There's lots of movement potentially there. So we haven't frozen, in other words. So now just feel yourself, imagine your legs are like two springs. So if someone was to come up behind you and just press on your shoulders, then you'd go down a little bit. And then when they release that pressure, you'd spring back up a little bit. Yeah. So let's just go up and down and just get it really sort of smooth and gentle. And just feel that it's actually all down, because the coming up of your body is because you've pushed down with your feet. So here I push down with my feet and my body rises, and then I just let gravity take me down, and then I squeeze up. Yeah. So what's important is that when you come up on the up phase, you don't let your energy rise inside you. Yeah, you can let the spirit come up. So this sense of brightness and enthusiasm, but not your chi. So you don't have a sudden surge like this. Yeah, and just feeling this gentle, springy lilt. That's it. Yeah, so we're really connecting to gravity, letting the body be its full weight. But because our legs are so strong and buoyant, there's a sense of almost weightlessness. Like buoyant is the right word, like a buoy floating in the sea, bouncing up and down. You just sink into the legs, and then the legs return you. Yeah. Ooh. Okay, now just bring it back to a stillness, but that's still there. You've still got all this movement, possible movements, if you like. Okay, now what we'd also like is that when we're standing still, for there to be a sort of buoyancy on the up and down, but also to be really willing to turn. So imagine like a gust of wind just blowing here and it just pushes you around a bit, and then another gust of wind. So let's just try that. So you're just yielding. So really feeling that you're responding to a pressure. You're not just turning your waist. Something is pressuring you, and that's causing you to turn. So the turning, it's not you are turning, but it's because something is happening to you. So you're not really the agent. You're just the mover. But it's something else that's making you move. So I yield. And just feel the quality of the turning. You know, if you're turning this way, then this side of your body is moving back, but this side of your body has to move forwards. Otherwise, you'd lose your balance and fall backwards. Yeah. And so this hand advancing is just as much part of the yield as this hand retreating. And without it, the yield is just difficult. You get into difficulty because you're not balanced. You know? So if you yield here, this has to come around the back of the person. Yeah? And then you just have to give them a little bit of a push, and they'll start having problems of their own. So I'm yielding. So this turn here has to throw the other arm around. Don't think of it as going forward so much as getting behind the back of the person. With my students, we just imagine that we've got like a little tiny rucksack at our back. And what I want to do is steal something from their rucksack. So it's like I want to touch that point between their shoulder blades. And it's really easy. It's not, you don't even have to reach because they're here. They're here now. Yeah. So you've got two hands. One hand is like a lure that is drawing the person through, and the other hand is sneaking behind them. Yeah. So you've got one hand in front of them and one hand behind them. So it's very much like an embrace, like a hug. I turn. And this is like pure Dr. Chi, really. And just feel how one side of your body, this side of my body that's yielding, it's sort of shrinking and collapsing into itself as one does when one yields. But this side is actually expanding. So it's like this half of my body is almost towering over the person as this half of my body is getting smaller and smaller. So the spine sort of tilts and twists because you're yielding with one half of your body and effectively attacking with the other half. Yep. So you're two people all the time in Tai Chi. So I yield and I slip behind, and it's a real turn. And so I really have to lose the lines with my mind. I must really let my head go on the turn. Okay, and now let's just turn like our normal sort of beginning exercise, but just with that same feeling. So just really turn. Yeah, just lose this line and lose this line, and just let yourself turn through. It's real polar coordinates. Yeah, you've got to lose that Cartesian space, that grid space. So you are the center of the universe and everything's revolving around you. Yeah. And just feel the problematic of turning. Yeah, because if you think riding horse is designed to stop you from turning, so it's designed to keep you stable and facing front. So to actually turn, I'm having to make all these micro adjustments with my legs and my feet to accommodate this turning. So just try and feel that, feel what you're having to do in the legs to make this turning smooth. That's it. That's it. So really, as you turn into this foot, really feel yourself letting go all around here of this foot. So you don't want to pull it over like this, yeah? So what has to happen in the hip? What sort of release am I effectuating in the hip so that both my feet can stay flat on the ground all the time? That's it. Okay, so let's just bring it back. And just so now just feeling that sort of springy bounce up and down, and also this willingness to turn. Yeah, it's almost like allowing movement to come in and sort of blur the edges. Yeah, so when you're standing still, there's a bit too much clarity, you're too distinct, you're too still. So if you can bring in this sort of ambiguity, then there's a lot more power because there's a lot more energy. Yeah? So it's not just all the time we're looking, you know, what do I need to feel in my body, but then also how does my mind have to shift in order to allow that. Okay, now just like consider two children playing catch. Yeah. So they've got this ball. Imagine like one of those medicine balls. Remember in gym? They're pretty heavy. Yeah. So they're playing catch with each other. So one's throwing it and the other one catches it, and then he throws it and the other one catches it. Yeah. Okay, Nitzan used to do this as an exercise because he got these medicine balls. They were quite small, so they weren't terribly heavy. But what would happen, someone would throw one to you and you would have to catch it and return it effortlessly. Yeah. So it's like real yielding, much more like Aikido in a way. So you'd let it come through, it would be coming through with all this momentum, and you just catch it and then just use your waist to yield and throw it back. But you'd have to make a loop. And obviously, the more strongly it was coming, the bigger that loop had to be in order to return it. Yeah. So this is basically what happens when you get a figure of 8. Yeah. So you're moving from side to side. So rather than just going into the leg and out again, you're going in on the turn, and then this turn just returns the energy. So let's just try that now. So just a bit more of a figure of 8 in the hips, moving from leg to leg. And just feel this is the guy that's playing catch. So it takes the ball and it just creates a pathway for it to roll along. So it should feel very natural. The figure of 8 should feel totally natural. It's just returning the energy in a gentle, smooth, effortless way. And I just naturally turn back because there's a point where you can't turn anymore. So it just turns itself backwards, and that starts the return. Ooh. Yes, so just feel it as just really so you're really going with it, but your probity, the part of your mind that's just making sure you don't lose it, that's your heavy sacrum. So all the time the heavy sacrum is there stopping you from flying away with it, keeping it rooted. But if you don't want it too rooted, otherwise it will just become stiff. So you've got this sort of pliable root, like an elastic root. You need the heavy sacrum. But there's a lot of play in the legs. So, That's it. And just feel as though this part of the figure of 8 can cover you. It can come over the top of you. Yeah? So this hand is digging into this foot and this one is coming over my head. So I really am encapsulating myself in this figure of 8. So I feel like I'm shrinking physically, but my figures of 8s are getting big enough to enclose me. And now let's try the same thing, but just backwards and forwards. So let's just start just going backwards and forwards. But again, we want it to return along a loop rather than just bouncing out of where it's gone to. So it travels a path. And again, it's always a figure of 8 because I've got 2 legs. That's it. And just if you can keep like a light mind, then you'll feel the energy. You'll feel the energy flowing ahead of your body a little bit. Yeah? And so the hands are sort of with the energy and the body's sort of lagging a little bit. Because the body's quite heavy, it takes quite a bit of energy to move it. Yeah, so we all know how it should feel because we've all got experience of being on a swing, you know, or on a slide, you know, or on a roundabout in the playground. You know, they're all machines to actually give the children experiences of energy, if you like. Yeah. So there's this sense that I'm being taken. The energy is taking me. It gets to that point where it's sort of effortless and such fun. And then just having the other foot forward, and again, just start off simple and just let it develop. That's it. So imagine you've got like ribbons, long ribbons sewn to your top, to your shirt or your blouse. And as you're moving, these ribbons are just floating through the air, creating all these beautiful shapes. So your energy is really elaborate. The movements, all the eddies and the curlicues and the That's it. Yeah. So you're enjoying it, but you're not indulging it. Yeah. So you've got that probity, that heavy sacrum that's just making sure that it can continue. You don't get carried away and then it sort of ruins. And that's it. Yeah, so you should feel like your arms, they just want to float. They want to float up and then they want to flow down. Yeah, so it's this sort of quality of moving around the figure of eight that keeps the arms up when we're doing the form. Otherwise, you're having to just use strength to hold them up. There should be a sense that the arms are sort of, ooh, you're almost having to make sure they don't go too high. So it's lovely. Okay, now let's just bring it back again. Yeah, so your two legs are like, two children playing catch. Yeah, so one throws you and the other one catches you and just, and you're thrown back in as gentle and as natural a way as possible. And you can basically use that sort of energy when you're walking. It becomes a bit of a skip. When kids, when they're walking and if they just get really happy, they start skipping. Yeah. So it's got that sort of, that energy, that quality. Okay, now let's just try a little bit just with the step. With the same quality, the same feeling of a figure of eight, returning around this foot. Yeah. And this is just basically a walk. I mean, if we had, like a long space, like a runway or something, then we could just do this and just walk down it. So we wouldn't have to just step with the one foot. So you're looping around each foot. And as you go around one foot, the other foot just naturally comes off the ground. That's it. And just feel if you can keep it smooth and even and continuous, then you can really relax into it. And a lot of the effort that one normally would use to do this just is not necessary because it's almost like a natural function of the body. Ooh. That's it. I always think of it like sewing or knitting, when you're making loops all the time and you're stringing these loops together to make a fabric. And now let's just get it. So with the yield and attack feeling, yeah? Yielding, attack, yield. But keeping that loopy figure of 8 going in the legs, in the hips if you can. And just feel if you get too much in the upper body, you tend to lose it in the lower. So there's always a trade-off. And now let's just bring it back to that's it. Yeah, so when you work with that sort of light playfulness, it just brings a lot of air, a lot of space into your body, into your joints. And it's just really healthy. So it just stops that compressive grinding that tends to take place in the joints. Okay, so now let's make some bread. So just imagine you've got this tabletop and this big lump of dough, and you've got to knead it. So if you've ever made bread, then the dough is not very springy because of all the gluten from the flour. So when you press it, it will actually return back. And that's the whole idea of kneading the bread, is that you make it even more springy. The gluten all sticks together in these strings, these elastic strings. Yeah. So that's just, so you're going in and squeezing. That's it. And so you're wanting it to come from the spine and from the ground. Yeah. So there's this sense that you're mustering your energy and bringing it over your head and smashing it into this dough. So you have to be very physical. There's a saying, isn't it, that men make good bread and women make good pastry. Yeah? Because it needs a lot of physical strength to actually make good bread. You've got to really punish that dough and get as much of your energy into it, your good energy. That's it. So it's right. And just feel just how stable and how your legs, your feet have to really grab the ground in order to give you a strong foundation for this. It's like you're throwing something over your head from behind. You're just casting the energy over. So it's very shouldery, a lot of shoulder. That's it. And now let's just bring it back to riding horse. Now just feel, it should feel like you've got these really sort of well-developed shoulders. You know, when you see a workman that's sort of like a farm labourer or a navvy, and they're sort of in their 40s and they've just physically worked hard for like nearly 20 years. They've often got massive shoulders and no neck. It's like their neck has sort of disappeared into their shoulders. So that's how we want to sort of feel. Yeah. Like a boxer, you know, they've got these really well-developed delts and traps, and their neck is just wider than their head. If you think the spine, you know, the two parts, the two weak points in the spine are the constrictions, the neck and the hip and the waist here. So we want to really make them really meaty. Okay, now let's try it again, and we'll do one hand at a time because you can get even more oomph then. So it's like you're going in and then the other one. So this is just such a natural action, because as you sink into the bread with one hand, the other hand comes up ready to come down. That's it. So there's a real twist going on in the spine. And it's very much like that yielding, where one side of your body is getting small and the other side is growing, which is causing this tilting in the spine. So you're really throwing your wings, your wing energy over your shoulder. Oh. Oh. That's it, yeah. So just enjoy it, sort of slow motion. Another way a tiger moves, when it's just prowling through the jungle, there's a real sense of slow motion to it. You can see all the energy rippling through its body as with each movement. And again, just really using the legs to clutch the ground. Okay, and then back. So here now really feel these big muscular shoulders. That's it. It's almost like your neck is just sort of non-existent. So you know, the theoretical foundation really is this idea that John had, that Homo sapiens, modern man, is a hybrid of Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon. So Neanderthal came out of Africa first, they settled Europe, and they were sort of short, squat, really strong. Yeah, and they just hugged the ground, so more like apes, yeah. And then Cro-Magnon man came out of Africa later, and they were tall and slender, and but they bred together. So Neanderthal wasn't wiped out really; they just became, it was subsumed, yeah. And so for the Cro-Magnon man, it used its legs to make itself taller. so that it could see over the savanna, over the grass. And Neanderthal man was using his legs to make himself shorter so that he could hide in this rocky terrain and hunt and be a good hunter. Yeah. And so we have both of those aspects, and we need to work both of them. Yeah. So the tall, slender Cro-Magnon, that's more like would be this, the image of the spiritual man, you know, the man reaching up to the stars. And then the Neanderthal is more like the beast. Okay, so now let's try basically the same exercise. So making the dough, making the bread, but with the feet, yeah? Because in the same way that the well-developed shoulders protect the neck, the well-developed hips protect the lower back. So we just need to develop really hefty hips the way that we have hefty shoulders when we work like this. So it's just basically just pacing the ground, but really squat. Yeah. So you're just grabbing the ground with your foot. You can use that. So just imagine there's like a big lump of dough on the floor and you've got to work it. Yeah. The same way you would work the dough on the table. So 1, 2, yeah. And just you just got to try and not let the body come up when you bring the leg up. Yeah. So all the principles of Tai Chi are there, but you just let the body tip. Imagine you're sort of treading grapes or something, yeah? But these grapes are like really tough, so you have to give them a bit of a bang to squelch them. Yeah, so you want to feel these hips developing with each lift of the leg and each placement, which has got a real scoop to it. That's it, that's it. That's it, you should feel a little bit mad. Okay, now let's come back to here. And now just feel it like, you know, that action of the leg, which is really just this sort of shape that's coming out of the sacrum. It just takes you, it keeps you low, and it gives you a real sense of something here. And then your lower back can almost sort of squash into it the same way you can let the neck down into the shoulders. Lower back can just settle into the hips, and then it's protected. That's it, that's great. Yeah, and so a lot of this is, in a sense, it's for me what's interesting about it, is that so what was it that enabled us to take that wrong turn, to take that technological turn for humanity, you know, where language became a technology, language became an end in itself, you know, so something, and really it's the space here, it's the ability to separate the upper and the lower body, you know, which enables the mind to sort of become this turmoil of speech. Yeah? And when you get these two sort of melding together, you're just a physical entity rather than the thinking entity. So there's no sense of being somewhere different than where you are. Yeah? You're here with this space in this body. You're not thinking about some other scenario. And then just feel the hearts. So the heart shape, which is like this, so there's these two lobes that separate and come down to a singularity, which is this point at the bottom, or you can just think of the heart as just having a curved bottom. Yeah. So the shoulders are very much like this, your whole torso, if you like, but then here as well with the legs. Yeah. But then also with the head, so the forehead sort of cleaving into these two horns, yeah, that then come down into this singularity, which is the chin, you know, this single pointedness here. Yeah. And it's interesting that, you know, we're always, in a sense, Charles Olson had a beautiful phrase. He called himself an archaeologist of morning, morning as in not evening. Yeah. And so we're, in a sense, we're sort of archaeologists or anthropologists. We're looking back to a time when we just used ourselves better. And and it's interesting, you know, we're coming into the Aquarian age, coming out of the Piscean age. So Christianity was the fish, you know, the two fish. And before that, you had Aries, and then you had Taurus. So you had these two animals that had horns. Yeah. And so there was like 5,000 years of horn energy. Yeah. And we just want to, you know, just feel an element of that, the physicality, you know, the potency of it. Okay. And now let's just, so now just feeling the other, the Cro-Magnon, the sort of the slender yogi, the spiritual man. Yeah, so the legs are sort of extending down beyond the surface of the ground, and your head is extending up beyond the crown of the head. And then let's just bring the leg up to the ground. Yeah, we're trying now to keep the spine as vertical as possible. That's it. So just feel the up from the crown of the head, from the finger, from the knee. Almost like they're being pulled up by the puppet man. So it's just golden rooster, really. That's good. Good. And now let's just bring it back to riding horse. And now just feel that. Feel that. You know, so in a sense, the quality that's associated with that skinny yogi, is stillness. Is like real sort of stillness. And associated with the other is this sort of just labor, if you like, which always requires movement. So deep inside, you know, your essence is this long, slender creature, and you're clothed in all these figures of eights and all this swirling and all this sort of sense of one and then the other, you know, walking and laboring. And then let's just bring it back properly. Wow. And just feel the shoulders, yeah, and the neck, yeah, and the hip, the lower back sort of protected by these structures here. And so you know the image of the effete aristocrat, you know, the sort of the English aristocrat, the sort of tall and skinny and feminine and with a lot of sort of movement. So basically it's like a weakness in the lower back and in the neck. So that's what we want to sort of guard against. Okay, great. So let's leave it there.